My take is that these things are so damn good and they're only getting better, but it's not getting better for everyone. And that's the problem. And I think if there's one question that someone should be consistently asking themselves, when did I sign up for the status quo?
Welcome to the Skyline Hour. I'm your host, Anthony.
And I'm your host, Michael.
Today, we're joined by Gautham. He spent the last several years working in New York City across consulting, finance, and tech. And he's been thinking deeply about AI and how it's going to reshape work, society, and our lives. So, Gautham, you graduated college in 2021, about 1 year before this whole ChatGPT came out and changed everything. At that time, what drew you toward tech consulting?
Yeah, first of all, thanks for the warm intro, Anthony and Michael. Excited to be here. Um, when I was in college and looking forward to where I was going to really start my career and how to like kind of use my degree, I went to school at Cal Poly and I studied business and information systems. The main thing I was really thinking about at that time was one, the location of the school, Cal Poly's in the heart of California. A lot of our career fair revolved around like the local tech companies, whether that be NorCal or SoCal. So I knew that it was going to be really hard to like move away from the tech industry itself. But my degree was in business. A lot of that you would associate with finance, like banking, which is all like on the East Coast in New York. So with those two considerations, I wanted to start my career in a way that didn't really like isolate either of those and kind of combined it where possible. Um, so I really started looking at like what are the kind of bridges in that area. One main industry that I was looking at was consulting, where you could have a number of different projects that span like both tech related or finance related topics and not really kind of like pigeonhole myself early on in my career. So I thought it was like a great opportunity to kickstart myself by doing consulting and just having that kind of like generalist resume to start off.
Yeah, just to ask about Cal Poly, is it like in between like San Francisco and Los Angeles? Is that what you meant by like you get both NorCal and SoCal? Yeah, how I'm just curious, like how is that like environment compared, to the Bay Area, which is like very tech focused, very engineering driven, and then in like Los Angeles, which is much more entertainment culture.
Exactly. Yeah. Cal Poly is literally like equidistant from both SF and LA. It's like a 3 hour drive from both. Um, and in terms of the industries that come to our like career fairs or recruit out of Cal Poly, it's mainly like the general like Silicon Valley tech companies that you could think of. There are like others like agricultural industries or entertainment industries that show up here and there, but a lot of it are like any Californian school that you would think of. Those are the people that are showing up.
Gotcha. And like, so you graduated in 2021. So this was during the height of the pandemic, and I guess right before ChatGPT and the advent of generative AI. Like, could you just tell us, like, to the viewers and to us as well, like how I guess things were different? Like, it might seem sort of like a trivial question, but it's been a couple of years, and I feel like we use AI tools in every facet of our lives these days. But back then, like, how did people do things?
Yeah. When ChatGPT came out, I was like a year or so into my time at Deloitte, which is where I started my career doing consulting. At first, it was immediately banned on like any corporate like device or laptop, like phone included, and any work that you submit, no one wanted to see like that traditional line, like the EM dash or like whatever it may be that was like an indicator that like AI was involved in that work. There was kind of like that period of like, hey, like if I'm a company and I'm outsourcing my work to someone else, like I don't want them taking a shortcut to do like that hard work because that's why I'm outsourcing it. So there was kind of like that sentiment. Soon after that is when the strategic partnerships started, whether that be like PwC and Anthropic, like OpenAI and like another like Bain or like whatever it may be. That was further down the line. I already exited consulting by then, but like from an early point, there was a huge shift in the sentiment, and it turned into like, hey, like yes, we're still like using these tools, but as tools to supercharge the work that we are already professionals at doing. So the evolving sentiment like changes like vastly over time. Like it could be something completely different today.
Yeah, and I guess to piggyback off of that, right? So I guess, through your time in consulting, like looking back, like what was the biggest assumption that people in our generation made about careers that I guess AI has started to force us to rethink?
Yeah. And honestly, like this is a landscape that is constantly changing. Um, like when we were in what like high school and college, there was like a semi-defined path. Like even if it was comments from a generation before us, whether that be like our parents or teachers or mentors, that it's like whatever, like doctor, engineer, lawyer, computer science, like businessman, financial, and like there are the lists that are kind of like a stamp of approval in society of like, hey, like you've made it. Like this is like a classic job. You'll have a strong career. You'll be able to provide for your family, etc. Like those assumptions are now being broken down today, and what we see is the kind of fallout from a changing industry, and that none of these things are kind of guaranteed anymore. Um, Especially like there feels like computer science are like completely being taken over by like undergraduate students like not being able to like find that first internship that launches their career, or like simple like job titles like kind of not really even existing anymore, or like new ones being like taking their place. For example, something like a prompt engineer, drop that in like 5 years ago, doesn't really exist. So there is a changing landscape there. So it's kind of up to the current generation to figure out where can I kind of like take hold, put my foot in the door, and the answers that we solved for ourselves in our generations and before, they're no longer the same answers that apply today.
I want to also just make this a little bit more concrete. So we just talked about more of the big picture of how AI is affecting our generation and the careers for our generation. But I'm pretty curious. So in your actual day-to-day work, what has AI changed over the last several years?
Yeah, it has changed like things here and there, and it's only beginning to evolve really. Um, for example, like the most recent development is that we were given like Copilot at my most recent job during doing program management at Bank of America. Um, and this was like a tool like there as like a regulated industry, like as strictly kind of regulated as banking. It's a slow trickle down effect where like the security privacy concerns of like leaking someone's like potential like banking information or personal information, like that would have an immense fallout that would greatly outweigh the benefits of giving someone like tools for like boosted productivity. um, so the slow rollout, like now we have Copilot, which has been helpful, and now we're slowly starting to get like metrics of like, hey, like we want you to put in like how about like one prompt a week, or like two like deliverables that you ran through with Copilot before you submit them. So it's just slow kind of prodding, getting people used to the tech. It's not as intense as like the kind of crazier headlines that you see at like Nvidia, where it's like, oh, if I don't have my software engineer burning through $500,000 worth of credits, I don't want them, right? Like it's not quite there yet, but different industries will move at different speeds in the adoption. And we're kind of seeing that across the board now.
I want to expand on this like point that you just made about like some industries moving faster than others. Like you were talking about like the example with Nvidia and Meta doing all this token maxing part, right? And then meanwhile in like consulting, sales, and project management, there's like slower adoption, as you were mentioning about Copilot. Because is this because of, I guess, like why are tech companies um why are they able to move much faster? Because like to my understanding, like a company like Meta, for example, they have a lot of like user like confidential like user data, right? So like why can't like traditional like industries, as you mentioned, like why can't they keep up? Even though I think like the data like concerns are roughly the same across the entire space.
Yeah, and that's a great point, and that's like honestly exactly the reason that all this is happening. For example, just last week we saw like I believe it was like Meta AI, that if you just like asked it nicely enough, it was able to like give you the password of any Meta account. And it's like, and it's like just crazy things like that. And it's like these companies' taglines used to be things like "Do no evil," "Move fast and break things," where it's like it's almost in the subtext of your mission to, regardless of whatever consequences may be, we push forward, we push the boundaries. Let's see what the next like benchmark we could make, how far, like how fast we could improve upon like whatever Moore's law output there could be. Um, and it's honestly, it's hard to see where and who regulation comes from. For example, in like a private industry, like whatever FANG company and related, it could be that even if there's like a regulation board or whatever, there always be that like bottom line push of like, yeah, hey, like we think the more tokens you use, the more opportunities we have for like economic advancement or growth on our bottom line. You switch over that kind of number one priority to a more like regulated or centralized industry, whether that be like healthcare that's been like stuck using like the same like 1970s software that's like you could like Claude code something better in like 15 minutes, but it's like what do you lose if that goes wrong, right? Like the immense kind of opportunity cost of failure is like that's what is most important, because if that goes wrong, there's really nothing you could do to undo it. And I think that's like the biggest difference in these industries. So I do appreciate that at least there are some kind of guardrails.
Very interesting perspective, I guess, on the differences on how these companies like take AI and their rate of adoption. So I wanted to like ask you like a follow-up question to this, which is that like I guess what is the future of employment? Or I guess like more inherently at a granular level, what is the purpose of employment?
Yeah. And this is like one of my like favorite questions to discuss, and honestly like more in like a conversational like style with you guys too. Like something I like to bring up, and this is from like some books that I read, and I'm sure this is like a common like philosophy, but you take like any kind of like regular job you could think of, modern day like US, or like just a general like salary job, and you kind of break it down into like what is the implication of that for your life, and just like some simple facts that I point out. It's like, okay, you take like that salary guide and you say like 2 years from now you got job security, you know, like you have all that, you're progressing, getting promoted, all that. Like Tuesday whatever, April 2028, like 11 a.m., like what are you doing? And I already know the answer, right? Like you're already like, either whether you're remote or in person, like you're going to be working on whatever it is that you need to be working on. And that is kind of woven into the fabric of our society, that it's like, yeah, I will give up. Like I am happy to give up whatever that like 8 to 5, 9 to 5 for whatever weeks of the year, so that I guarantee like, what is it that we guarantee? It's like some salary that like will guarantee like the minimum, like food, water, shelter, like some kind of like future, like promise of future success. Because like your shifting baselines will say naturally that it's like, okay, like I'm a new grad, I got an apartment that I need, like I got to get the house, like you got to get married, and then there are kids, so your head count goes from 1 to 2 to 3 to 4. So it's something that allows the system to kind of bring you up to speed as you progress in life. And that's like the social contract that we sign today. And that like has, for whatever part, has worked. Like that is what has driven our like national GDP to like, we're coming up on 250 years of the United States. It has only been upward growth with this same style. Now we flash back to whatever, a medieval like serf or a peasant, like something that we almost like inherently look down on, or we like read in a textbook and say like, oh, like I don't want to be a peasant, like I want to be an aristocrat. How can I not have the ability to pull myself up by the bootstraps, like basic like American principles? But in that social contract, like you could say like if you're a serf like tending the fields, there are only so many months of the year that you need to like till the soil, like do physical work, harvest the crops, sell them at the market. So actually like a lot of time like you have the ability to foster like relationships in your community, like talk to your family, like hang out, like follow your like passions, do whatnot. And you look at those social contracts that you sign in, they're not all so different. And you look at today, and then like a question could be like, oh, like AI is taking my jobs. Like, what does that mean? It's not just that it takes your salary, but there are so many other things tied to it today that we only start thinking about when they get taken away. For example, a lot of our like insurances are tied to our like wherever you work. So like an example that I use is like, hey man, like if I pass out in Times Square and I get picked up by EMS or a paramedic, the first question that I have to tell them is like, hey, like I don't have like health insurance. They're like, oh, like where do you work? Like why is that the first question instead of like, hey, like how can I help you? Or like let's get you like to safety or let's get you healthy. Like there are so many other things. Like for example, like another one could be like social security. Like we pay whatever 16%, you and your employer combined, into a program that is almost destined to run out of money in the next like 20, 30 years. So there are all these like things that we're tying to employment that go beyond just your day-to-day work. So it's almost like it captures the entirety of your life. So then when there's that risk of someone taking that job away from you, you realize like just how much you actually need it in this current state of society.
Yeah, and that's a very interesting take. And I guess yeah, you were referencing like the social contract that's sort of I guess been here for a millennia, so to speak. Like what do you then see as like the future of this said contract? Like will this contract even be in place? Like, there have been like quite a bit of talk by the likes of people like Elon Musk and Bernie Sanders about universal basic income or even universal high income, depending on, I guess, how optimistic you are on AI. Like, how will this, like, this age old, like, contract be rewritten, so to speak?
Yeah. And I obviously don't have like a perfect answer to this. If I did, that would be lit. It would be great. I think the difference with this, like UBI, or like I haven't even heard that term, universal high income. So if everyone's
Elon.
got high income,
E-
then no one has it, right?
that's what Elon says. I borrowed
Yeah,
this phrase from Elon. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, yeah, interesting thought for sure. But I think like inherently still, like still, UBI, like what it comes down to is how can you trade your dollars for some goods and services? Like it assumes like the same current state of like like you have some kind of income that you then trade for your needs over time. But to look at this empirically, you can't have any allegiance to the current state, which is why like you hear people that think about this problem always reference like seemingly like nonsense behaviors of like, oh yeah, like the hunter gatherers were doing like crazy things back in the day, because like there is no need to reference like to go from 0 to 1 assuming that current society is 0. Like you can start from a clean slate and ignore like all of these societal problems that exist now and say like, hey, if this was a problem, like you start from 0 of like, hey, I got 8 billion people, like 20% of the population does 80% of the work. You list all your constraints and try to solve it from there. Even like a small group could come with some answers that look like a society completely unlike what we see today. So to detach from the current state, I think is key to even start thinking about this.
And like really quickly, like what is your vision then for that like future state? Like if you, let's say you were in charge of this small group, like what would you think would be ideal in this post singularity society?
Yeah, and this is my favorite quote of all time, and it starts with the discovery. It starts with there are actually two Earths, but you only discover the second Earth when you realize that there is only one. And in that same breath, you could say the same thing about anything. you have two lives. Like you only start living when you realize that there's only one. Like all of this is intertwined in that uh like there are so many things that we give up in the name of this current state, whether that be like things like ecological collapse, whatever, like simple like capitalistic based approach to like society, corporations, like day-to-day living. We're giving up all those things, and I know it's not getting to the core of like, oh, like what should the future look like? But I think the answer to that starts with what are the things that we need to like at least look at in the mirror and say like, hey, like we shouldn't be doing it at least this way, and then you can start building from there.
For me, I
Yeah.
feel like there's going to be a lot of social unrest if we go down this path, because a lot of people's whole like self identity, right, is pretty much tied to their employment. I mean, people are working for the vast majority of their lives, like every single weekday, sometimes even on the weekends. And if you just take that away from someone, even if you have universal basic income, universal high income, at that point, people will begin to ask, like, what is the meaning of life and what is their like higher purpose? What do you guys think about that? About how this will impact people's sense of identity and just purpose in life?
Honestly, I think that is so funny. Like I like that's like the funniest thing. And like that's so common too. It's like, oh, like what are you gonna do? Like what are you gonna do? Like it's like Tuesday, 2028. You don't have like 2020. You don't have to work. What are you gonna do? And it's like, oh no, like you're gonna have to start thinking about what's the meaning of life. Like, isn't that exactly like why we're put on this earth? Like to like literally just be one, a vessel for experience of the universe experiencing itself. And then two, if you believe like there's something of like a soul or personal identity, it's to like try to find what expression means to you. And instead, it's almost like we're burying those thoughts and be like, oh, like that's too hard to think about. Like Claude, just tell me what to do, man. Like, like it doesn't it feel like just mass escapism? I don't know. It feels like that to me, and you know, I would prefer the alternative of like almost like tackling the hardest questions. Like, why are we here? What should we do?
I mean, I think isn't that the motto of one of the AI companies? I think it's like XAI or something for Grok. That's like discover like truth, use AI to tackle truth. Yeah, I mean, I think it's very interesting, like the point that you brought up, right? Which is like it's like there's like the debate, right? It's like, well, if AI like sort of like, as Anthony was alluding to earlier, yeah, people's identity, I mean, it's always kind of been associated with work, right? I mean, like back in the 1960s, like just probably one generation ago, we would have people work their entire lifetime in a company, right? That's where like the pension, before the 401ks, there were pensions, and like basically like it was considered very, very like a high honor to just like work decades at a certain company. But I think like nowadays, like what especially like us like being familiar with the tech industry, right? And perhaps like you can give your opinion on this. Is like it seems like now the horizon seems much shorter, to like the time when AI, like, coding agents these days have already effectively displaced software engineers. So many fear that it's just a matter of time before they just displace all the functions of knowledge workers. So I guess, yeah, like, do you think then it's like, well, and the absence of like working for a company that, people inherently lose like I guess their identity and resort to just well, I think the term is fatalism. I'm not like 100% sure. Or do you think they would actually use this to like actually spark their like inner passion? Like for example, like maybe something that's not traditionally like in the workplace that they always wanted to do.
I mean, I would just say like leave it to a company to convince a population that the highest honor you can achieve is working for them for your lifetime, right? Like of course that's what their ideal society would look like. That would be the best case. if everyone is just like, oh man, like how do we make sure that like we have no attrition, no churn, our like product leaders stay for as long as possible and don't go to our competitors. It's like make them believe that this is the best thing you can do, right? And that doesn't give any answer towards like, okay, like we've like dissolved every company, no one has any work, what are they going to do? You could go back to work if that is really is your real calling. And that goes back to define like what is work. Is it strictly like the XYZ professions that we listed before, or could it be like aspiring like guitarist, like artist, whatever, etc. um, but leave that up to the individual to decide for themselves rather than having something set in stone of, if you are someone to succeed in this society, you should be earning X amount, have these many kids, whatever. Like it just shouldn't be defined like that. Actually, I'll add one more thing real quick. Like if we look at the isms over time and like our current whatever, like AI ism, like almost like technology as a deity, where we're like, oh no, like when are we going to reach like AGI? Like when is it going to all become obsolete? Leave it to humans of the current day to declare that their current generation is the most important of all time. We look back in history and be like, oh, like some art period, let's call it modernism. It's a real period. And we could like look it up and be like, oh, when was that? Surely it was recent because they're saying they're modern. But it was like hundreds of years ago. And that then, like a renaissance or whatever, some whoever is happening at that time, they're like, everything has changed now that modernism is here. So what's the thing that happens after modernism? Postmodernism. That was hundreds of years ago, right? Like, and it's like all these things are just funny to look at, how like it's just consistent human hubris to say that I exist now, I feel self-important, and therefore this is the most important time in human history. Maybe this era like will be drowned out, just how you go to Times Square 4 years ago and every billboard is of like an NFT project. Things get shaken out and you're left with what is actually relevant. But, like I would just say we don't know what's going to stick now, and to just like not proceed with caution will just lead to more like ruin than success.
That also brings up this other idea we've been seeing in the news a lot. You see a lot of the CEOs of these AI labs warning about all of these large downstream societal implications that we just all discussed. And then some of them, like the Anthropic CEO, is calling for pretty much a slowdown of AI progress across the world. Is this really something that's actually achievable? Like, will we really be able to put guardrails on this shift and slow everything down? Or is this more of just a marketing scheme and trying to slow down competitors? What is your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, like I feel like it's unfair to anyone to like look to the guy like selling the thing for his opinions and how we should proceed. Whether that be like Jensen Huang being like, oh yeah, like I want my developers to use like 500,000 credits a day. Bro, like you're the one selling the credits. Like, of course you want that. Like, you can't establish your own product as the benchmark, one. And then two, like there's this like, you could say like the Anthropic CEO, like saying like, oh, we should slow down. In that same way, we have 4 or 5 years ago, like Mark Zuckerberg saying like, oh my God, guys, like humanity, what have we done? We don't have community in the world anymore. We used to be together. It's harder to do now that there's technology. You know what? I have an answer. Come over to Meta and we'll bring you the community that you so like longingly miss. Like, of course, these guys are going to say these same things. That one, it is a real, like, these are all real problems. And these are all, like, seemingly real solutions. But that answer to that problem is never the thing that these guys are seeking. Despite billions of dollars of wealth and increasing age, every single one of these CEOs, well into their 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, are still working. And like, if you could say that, like, oh man, like, I just want to escape the rat race so I could go live my life, there is something that is keeping all of these guys like strapped into their chairs and continuing to work. Whether, and it's not money, right? They already have it. Like, so it just seems to be that there is like things beyond what we could understand at like quick glance or face value about what is actually happening behind the scenes that is driving these like massive like societal undertakings. And we can't just blindly listen to those that have the greatest stake in these, because more often than not, best interest of like society is not at the top of their agenda.
So on that point about how these top people may not necessarily have the best interests of society, we're also seeing a lot of them use the national security card as a way of trying to rally the whole nation behind these really powerful, increasingly powerful companies. And they're almost framing this as actually like a battle between the east and west sides of the world, like the US versus China, for example. A common argument we see online is, oh, if we slow down AI progress within the US, China may just go ahead and continue to accelerate and eventually exceed the US and their AI capabilities. And that could eventually have really drastic effects on like even democracy, they argue. What do you think about this argument? Does this have merit, or is this more of a grand generalization of the problem?
Yeah, and there are two ways I could answer this question. There's one with like the practical way that like looks at the facts of like, okay, like if we slow down our development, that will lead to like our competitors gaining an edge. If they gain an edge, our GDP goes down. If our GDP doesn't grow, whatever. Some back and forth of the implications of whatever, like an AI arms race, right? But as we like briefly touched on earlier here, I don't have any bias towards preserving the current state of society. So if someone were to say to me like, "Oh, hey, like the US is moving at some rate of like increase of like AI capability and China is moving at some other rate." And if those are two like parallel lines that are like due to like, clash at some point, I don't even think of that as a reality. More so, it just seems like a made up societal like qualm that are made up by like the people that are most in power and maybe like shouldn't be. And the way to best like kind of like break it down mentally would be like, let's say we're at the peak of this AI arms race, where it's like whatever threshold it takes to win, like let's say the US is like some matter of days away, and so is China. What would it take for either of these parties to just let it go? And we could think as drastic as possible. Think like as broadly as you can. Like an asteroid is 1 minute away from Earth. Then who cares about AI, right? Like you need to work together as like a species and solve that. Like whatever, asteroid. Let's say like God touches down in Miami. Like who cares anymore, right? Like nothing matters anymore. Like that there's like a specific point at which like, hey, like I know we've made up all of these like things like a capitalistic society, like whatever, like GDP, like rate of return, like stock market, like all of these become nonsense once something, like it could be like anything, happens. And once you like think of the potential of an event like that, it just shows how like nonsensical these like races are. If you even look at like the previous one, like the Cold War, the immense level of threat is like for what? Is it, and it's not like you're racing to launch the missile. You're just racing to create the thing and be like, hey, we got it. We could use it. And it's like whatever, like whatever it was called, like mad, where it's like, hey, if you launch one, then I will too. Um, like it's just like the same like human schoolyard level issues at the global scale. And it's like, what can you do to prevent that? It's like, bro, like just don't be that like short-sighted and think of like the grander scale of how much impact things could have.
That's like an interesting, I guess, perspective. Like my understanding of the situation is like what you're referring to as mutually
Yeah.
assured destruction during the Cold War era. And I think, I mean, depending on who like you like talk to, right? Like, like the national security hawks in Washington, D.C. would basically say, yeah, the Chinese, like their AI is a threat to the United States because of, well, China's positioning as sort of the second superpower of the world, right? And their values and government are quite a bit different than ours. But meanwhile, we also like there's also proponents of greater like collaboration, right? I guess, is that your perspective? Is that there should be more open collaboration between China and the United States to
Yeah.
pursue this grander vision, or yeah.
Like, yeah. I'm just saying, like, you could pose a hypothetical of like what would be the minimum impactful event to give up an AI arms race on either side. And that's why I say I'm like bringing up things like, okay, like God touches down on Earth, and like the U.S. is like, hey man, like you could win the race. Like I'm gonna say like see what's good with God, right? Like there are imaginable things that would supersede any societal level squabble, because inherently society is a made up like thing. Like you can abstract yourself enough to like not care about these things anymore, because they are like things that have been written and developed over like hundreds of years that aren't like inherent to like our biology or like our instinct. Like they're like learned behaviors. So like if you're able to abstract and like kind of like let it go, why can't we take those steps beforehand, in like instead of waiting for like the catastrophic event that has to unite us all, right? Like why can't we just do that in the first place?
But like maybe to push back on that notion, like I think the examples you gave are sort of maybe considered low probability events versus like policymakers, and you can see this in Congress or like around the world, right? Beijing, like they sort of think about it in terms of like politicking, right? Like geopolitics, and practicality sort of is the, I guess, the state of the world, right? Like it's like very game theory oriented. So it's like like sure, like if an asteroid did like hit tomorrow, right, or was inbound for Earth, like there would be that unity. But having said that, like traditionally we've not seen like great like unifying events in the world, like not even during COVID, during the pandemic. As far as I'm concerned, there was a lot of I guess like blame going around like during the pandemic. So like does like this like unifying like this theory like sort of like, I guess, not apply as much given the current world's dynamics?
Yeah. And these are like all these examples are like super abstract, like a meteor or like God showing up. Like what about like the modern day developer that's creating his own like replacement on Claude, and that's like just at like one, and that's just happening like across the board, right? Like we're like racing to that line of self displacement. Like whoever is working today is genuinely like working on those things. So you can say like at a grand scale, like, oh, like the US is doing this, China is doing that, treating the US and China as individuals. But if you look at the parts of the whole that make them up, and you ask the individuals themselves, like, hey, like, do you really want this? Or like, do you sign up for this? I'm sure the public opinion or the general opinion even would be vastly different than whatever like policy is taking place. And I think like that disconnect is equivalent to like the same thing that I'm saying of like, hey, like what would it take for everyone to be like, hey, I'm not going into work tomorrow, and like it's the same kind of principle.
I think that it's a very insightful perspective there. Yeah, jumping like I guess like on this topic. So now focusing back on United States here. So Anthropic and OpenAI recently announced that they were seeing signs of recursive AI training, meaning AI is getting better and like at a much faster rate than before. And they believe this is a major inflection point for AGI. And I know that you had your skepticism about the claims from these like leading AI labs. Like, first of all, do you put any credence into these like claims? And if so, then how do you think this will affect like society?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, there are like so many different like variations of this take, like for and against. Like one, like just how good AI is, whether that be like whatever, like essay creation, like the original stuff, right? Like, oh, I have an essay due tomorrow. How good can you make it for me? Like now it's like how good can you like program for me? Like how well can you like detect like cancer at a stage that like beats whatever system that we had. I'm sure all of these benchmarks are being blown out of the water. And I'm like would say like, that goes against like the AI skeptics that are saying like, oh, like whatever information is in there is just regurgitated from whatever human input that was put in. Right? I would say that's the AI skeptic take. That you're not creating anything original. Whatever you put in, whether legally or not, was just scraped from actual human actions and research that is then being like repackaged and sold for profit by AI companies. Like that's the skeptic take. My take is that these things are so damn good and they're only getting better, but it's not getting better for everyone. And that's the problem. In that, like, even if there were capabilities that 10x whatever the current state is, it's not like a regular guy would have the same outputted like impact to his life as someone that is like in that same space would get. Whether that be like, let's say, like a biotech advancement of like an anti-aging or like anti like health risk thing, even if it was possible for these like updates and changes to be readily available, cheap and accessible, it won't be, because the system that all these things are happening in is the same system that is consistently like letting people down that don't have like a job, don't have insurance, or like from like a different background that is just like not doing well. In that same way, like if like a major league sports player gets injured, they're able to be seen at like 10x the speed that like a regular guy is, and it's not like any of that changes. So even if the capability goes that far, you're stuck with the same problem that like not everyone could get it, and you're stuck in that like kind of pay to win method. Um, yeah,
If I'm understanding you correctly, like you're saying, rather than, I guess, like, the nature of the technical like aspects of AI itself, you think the limiting factor is the organizations that govern basically society. Like, in healthcare, it's the government. In the corporate environment, I think you earlier alluded to like basically like needing a centralized like framework. Is that understanding correct?
yeah, yeah, pretty much.
On a similar note, talking about if we do really see this recursive AI training take off, the AI exponentially gets better. You also hear a lot of this talk about leveling the playing field. So, pretty much raising the floor of everyone. And it's almost like what previously used to be hard skills are becoming more commoditized. Like, for example, they say anybody can be a coder or a programmer these days with Claude Code. Do you think that vision is actually true, that knowledge work and these hard skills, is it all truly being commoditized, or will there always be this discrepancy between these powerful companies and then just the individual, even with these superpower tools?
Yeah, I think that. the for your last point, yes, there will in this current system there will always be like no matter how high you raise the floor, the ceiling is getting raised at that much higher of a rate. Like any tool that you give the bottom guy, just know that they're like six plus steps ahead at the top. Um, and historically, like whatever you look at, like trickle down economic, like whatever it may be, people at the top will be like, hey, if you work hard, your slice of the pie will be bigger. And you could look at like how much money a company is making, your team is making, your county, your country, whatever. And that's true. It is true because the pie will always get bigger. The company makes more money. The country is always going up. Whatever S&P 500 is always going up. But what they don't talk about is your slice of the pie is always the same, and actually may even be shrinking. So while it may be that you are making more money, it's always relative to what. And if you're not able to like progress upward, like all of these other things are, you're going to be left in the same situation that you were before. And that's the same like reason why like people like at like whatever we're seeing like 1.4 trillion dollar valuations of like a single individual. That's just outrageous, right? Like what are we even doing at this point? Um, but going back to your original question of like, like what's going to happen in the future to these industries, like if I were to, like mentor a kid now, like what direction would I point them in? I could make like have a take and be like, oh yeah, like, yeah, we're ditching CS, we're ditching business, like go into like carpentry or go into like physical labor. I could say that, but those are all just pure speculation. Um, Something that I turn to when it's like my turn to give advice to the next generation is this concept called the Tower, which is like a very old German philosophy. Is like from a book. This guy like Wilhelm's Adventures. But basically, it's this society that has a tower, and that tower is the society. And the only goal of the members of the tower is to nurture and guide the next generation to do whatever it may be that they do best. So it's not like, oh, hey, like we need a gardener, we need an engineer. Find who's next that could fill that spot. The basic philosophy is that how you're able to best fit your society is to do whatever you do best. And that's like a very basic principle that kind of goes against anything that we do now, where it's like you can be whoever you want to be, but eventually try to fit some mold that will be like some outcome of success, whether that's like money, like status, career, etc. And in the tower, it's like literally like a secret society that's behind the scenes, giving people like the mentors they need, the challenges, the opportunities they need. And you could say like, hey, like this is like a fictional work. The tower isn't real. How am I going to do that in practice? But I would point to the viewer and say like anyone that's watching this has that person or people in their lives that point them in a good direction, whether that's like a parent, teacher, friend that's like actually genuinely looking out for you. And I would just say like, hey, like all you have to do is listen to yourself, and find what you believe your purpose is and to seek that and to kind of reject like any pre-made solution that someone may have for you.
That's a really great point, and I think just being a bit more specific on what is your purpose. So, how are you trying to, I guess, find ways to figure out your purpose, or what are you trying to optimize for?
Yeah. Um, Honestly, like a lot of people like say like, hey, like, I'm just seeking happiness, like as like a kind of blanket statement. And it's like, it's like it works, but I don't look at happiness as a constant state of being in that like whatever, like at any given time, if someone points a finger, it's like, hey, are you happy right now? I'm like, oh, I don't know. Like maybe, maybe not. But it's not like a reliable long-term goal because it's almost like a fleeting feeling, like inherently, right? So I try to think of the future as how can I consistently be in a good spot to be content. If you look at things that you look forward to in day-to-day life, and it could be as simple as today's like Tuesday, June 16th. I'm looking forward to Friday evening. Like whatever that future thing is, it's always a thing that's either about to happen or has already happened. Like anything in life, you're barely like it's almost like an insignificant amount of time that you're in the moment that you enjoy. Like with anything. Like sure, you can have many of them, but the amount of time that you're in the thing is like basically zero. It's always before and it's always after. So, like if you change your life to that perspective, like you can just build it so that hey, like I like doing those things and being in those moments. How can I like either increase the number of it, increase like the period of time of it, make sure the people that I want to be there are there. Like you just kind of transform the way you do it. And then you start looking at, all right, what are the things that I like take away from it? Oh man, like I missed like lunch with my kid because I was stuck at work. So, like you take away the blockers to that. And just kind of like, I just like to position myself in those ways where I'm just kind of optimizing for like my future self. But yeah, what do you guys do?
That's always a hard question. Yeah, thanks for I guess responding so eloquently when we're putting you on the spot on this question. Yeah, I think yeah, what you said is like really really good. Like just the small things in life, right? Like yeah, happiness is like a fleeting moment, right? But at the same time, like, you'd prefer to be more happy than sad, like, in general, right? Like on most days I prefer to be happy. So yeah, I think it's like whatever's like smaller, the small things in life, right? Like, you mentioned family, friends, partners, hobbies. I think all of this is like very important. Like, I mean, studies show, right, that being like happy like extends lifespan, and being like sad and depressed like shortens it. Yeah, I also like I'm just like thinking that like with AI like in the future, right? Like I know like this is like, I mean, very contentious, and there's no one correct answer, right? But it's like the hope is like, I do like, for what it's worth, think we will reach the singularity, right? Like, organizational issues like withstanding, like I think, AI will eventually like be able to like, hopefully, I guess most optimistically, empower us to do like whatever, we want. Like, it just removes all the tedious like things in your life. Like imagine like, before you didn't know something, you had to like Google search it, and you just had to go through pages after pages, and you wouldn't understand like what to do. But with AI, it allows you to just kind of like, ask a question, and it can just respond right away, and almost always it's like factually correct. And in the future, right, it's like, especially with the advent of robotics, the hardware component of AI, like I just think, yeah, like if something breaks, for example, if your toilet breaks or something, you can just get like a robot to fix it. And that would just honestly, like just getting even rid of like the minor annoyances in life, right? Like even like driving, right, through self-driving cars, that would be a major like, you know improvement and quality of life for people.
Honestly, like that sounds fun and that sounds great. But I could just see how that whole system is just almost instantly like manipulated. And it's like, I don't know, maybe it's like a cynical perspective, but you like look at the guys that are doing like in in an idealist thing, like these are all great solutions. But it's just annoying when you know that it's almost guaranteed that like when you have that toilet that breaks, like behind the scene, based on the AI model that you have, they've got a partnership with like toilet company one, two, or three. So it'll be like, oh yeah, you got that problem. Like make sure you use this vendor And it's like, bro, like it's not like that's wasn't the point of this advancement. Like the point of it is all those things that you said, but like the way that it's presented and packaged to us, it's almost guaranteed to not quite be that way. And it just seems like, bro, it feels like you have, or not like you per se, like I'm saying, like whatever industries that are driving this have ulterior motives. It's like, hey, like these people would be down to implant a chip in their brain or like get Whoop not on their wrist, but as part of their like blood cells. Like you package the use case in a way that it enables other use cases that you didn't sign up for. And that's just like the slippery slope that like I feel like I'm not willing to go down.
I also have one point to add on that. So it seems like with all of these crazy advancements, like the robot will fix your toilet, will be driven around, we can get any information instantly. All of this new technology is pretty much reducing the amount of time it takes for any human to actually arrive to some conclusion, right? And we've already seen this transition happen with like short form content on social media. So previously, like way back in the day, people actually had to go to a library, right, and read a book to try to learn about new information, go through the encyclopedia. Then the internet came, and then there's like Wikipedia and all of this information online. And more recently, we've been seeing TikToks become pretty much ubiquitous throughout the younger generations at this point on how they consume media. And there's been a lot of implications on this, right? We see a lot of studies coming out showing how a lot of these younger kids, the attention spans are just continually decreasing. Are humans even meant to basically be able to receive all of this stuff with so little, increasingly less time? What is this doing to like dopamine, even, right? Human dopamine and just reward cycles.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, this whole like dopamine argument is interesting because like at the highest level, like whatever, the highest funded like private or government think tank, they're all thinking of us as a monkey, like just straight monkey. It's like, oh, hey, if you put this shade of yellow, he's not gonna look away. You know, if you like slowly drop in a pickle into that burger, he's gonna order that within the next 7 to 10 business days. Like that's the level of non-surface level perception that these like companies are targeting. So it just goes to show like we can think of ourselves as these like higher level beings that are capable of developing like insanely deity like structures like AGI, but at the end of the day, like we are simply just like monkeys on this planet that are low key like the greatest opponent that Earth has ever faced. And not only are the things that like are running our like modern day, like whether that be like I could say like an oligarchical society run by like companies like Meta, Google, TikTok, whatever, now SpaceX. Like these guys, if you were to have like a public sentiment, it would just purely be negative. It would purely be like, yeah, like this, someone should stop these guys. Um, like they are coming for our attention, coming for our time. Like it just seems to not be like ideal to leave the future in the hands of these same structures that have led us down the wrong path over and over again.
I think that yeah, you mentioned like multiple like critiques or criticisms of the current like societal structure. So I guess like what would your like ideal structure be like, even like for example in short form like content, like would an ideal like environment just be like the pre like iPhone era? I feel like there's been a lot of like people mentioning, yeah, like before like 2000, like the late 2000s when smartphones came out, like people were a lot less addicted to their phones, and and then later on social media and everything. Like, are you advocating for sort of a return to that era, or like how would you want things done differently
Yeah.
here?
Um, I like to I like to try to go camping at least like once a year. And it's like pretty tough in New York, like just to rent a car. Like
Mhm.
it's so fun, like in Seattle, Bay Area, like the infinite options, like so many places you can go. But whenever I like share, like, oh, like, hey, I'm about to go camping, the like number one first response is like, oh, it would be so nice to just unplug, right? And I'm like, always hear that. I always hear it would be so nice to unplug. But my contention is that there is no such thing as unplugging. There's only the first plug in that everyone has like, whether or not like they realize they did it, but they realize like they at one point plugged in and it's impossible to re unplug. Um, and the point of all that is to say like no one is born plugged in. And like if you were to go camping or like just be outside for like 24 hours, your body within one day will reset its circadian rhythm. The sun sets, you get sleepy, the sun comes up, you wake up. Like these are just simple truths of our biology that like we've kind of just left behind one at a time. Whether that be just like, oh hey, like the sun went down, I still gotta see. You make a light bulb. Oh, like my feet hurt. There's like a needle in the haystack. Oh, you make a shoe, right? Like all of these like micro decisions over time are what created this society itself. But then like you look back and see like how far we've come from like a more like animal or primitive nature and be like, oh my God, like what have we done? Right? Like any like city that you live in, let's say like there's a deer walking down Fifth Avenue. It's like, what the hell is this deer doing in my city? Right? Like who are we to like kick out all like non-humans out of like any land that we're supposed to be on? So it just seems like the humanist perspective, where humans are on top of everything else, like our priorities are number one. It doesn't even seem to be serving ourselves. So that's what I think of the unplugging argument.
Okay, so one final question for you, Gotham. What is a question that more people should be asking themselves going forward?
Yeah. Um, that question makes me think of one scene in the Office TV show, where it's basically like a career day or like something where like the Office cast is interacting with some kids, and Pam, who's a secretary like on the show, is like talking to some like little girl, and she's like dressed up as a princess. And Pam says like, "Hey, like when I was a little girl, like I wanted to grow up to be a princess too." And the little girl says like, "Hey, like you're already grown up. Like you're not gonna be a princess." And she like Pam is just like, "Oh my God!" Like it's just like the crushing weight of like, "Oh wait, was I supposed to already have done something in life?" And it's just maybe everyone may or may not like have a moment of realization. I can go back and find like pictures of like dinosaurs or like Spider-Man or Star Wars. At no point in my life was I like, oh yeah, 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 tech consulting. That's what's gonna do it, right? Like these are all status quos and walls that have been brought up or put down one way or another over time in life. And I think like if it's like there's one question that someone should be consistently asking themselves, when did I sign up for the status quo? What even like and it's like it just shows what are these implicit rules of society that everyone seems to have to follow? Why is it that way? Do I agree or disagree with those things? In popular culture, like almost across the board, like any of these major franchises, you'll see a similar trope or storyline where there's some kind of like existing government or like higher power, And I'm thinking of stuff like Harry Potter, like Percy Jackson, Star Wars, where there's some existing society and a threat, and it takes someone that is unbarred by the status quo to be like, God, like, why are we doing it this way? We are always losing. Why can't we just think about how to actually solve the problem? And only then, when like it's like some like the chosen one and just like a regular guy almost that just like rejects rules, like policy, the way we've always done things, and just think from the ground up. And I think that is something that is missing from today's society, where it's like you think of these massive problems. It's like, oh, like what are we gonna do? It's China versus the US. And it's like, why can't we just think of like, what if we just didn't have that problem in the first place? Like, what could we do then if we just had the power of like what we can develop and what they can develop, right? Like, it just seems to me that the it's always opposing sides and never truly thinking about the capacity of what we could do as a human race.
I think that's a great place to end. Gautham, thank you so much for joining us. That was a really fun conversation.
Thank you
And
so much.
for everyone listening, thanks for tuning in to the Skyline Hour. We'll see you next time.
Take care.